Everyone loves peace at home, but imagine a knock on the door that changes everything. A quiet afternoon turned unsettling when two men dressed like officers showed up at a man's house, flashing fake badges and acting like they were with the HOA. At first, the homeowner was confused. He hadn't done anything wrong, yet these strangers claimed they had authority over him. Their tone was sharp, their presence intimidating, and it felt more like a threat than a neighborly visit. The men stood frozen for a moment, unsure whether to open the door fully or close it right away. What they didn't realize was that inside this very home lived his son, a disciplined Navy SEAL veteran who understood exactly how to handle situations of pressure and deceit. The men outside thought they could scare a family into silence. They thought they could control the narrative with lies and fake uniforms. But behind that door was someone trained to face real danger, someone who had spent years recognizing fear tactics and breaking them down. What came next wasn't just a confrontation, it was a lesson in courage, patience, and what happens when people try to abuse power in the wrong place. The two fake officers knocked louder, demanding the homeowner step outside. Their voices carried arrogance, as if they were untouchable. The homeowner's heart raced. He wondered why these so-called HOA enforcers were targeting him specifically. He didn't know whether to argue or stay silent, but before he could decide, his son quietly approached from behind. Calm, alert, and unreadable, the Navy SEAL observed everything, the way they stood, the way they avoided eye contact when flashing their so-called ID, and the inconsistency in their words. He knew instantly, these weren't professionals. They were imposters trying to use fear to gain control. Without raising his voice, he stepped closer to the door, his presence strong and steady. The father looked at his son, relief filling his eyes, and in that moment, he realized he wasn't alone in this fight. When the door creaked open wider, the fake cops stiffened. They had expected a nervous man, someone easy to scare. Instead, they were met with a quiet force that didn't need a uniform to show authority. The son's calm question, "Can I see your credentials properly?" sent a chill through them. It wasn't just words. It was the tone of someone who had seen real threats, and these men didn't measure up. The silence after that question was louder than their fake badges. One of the imposters fumbled with his pocket, pulling out the same laminated card he had flashed before. But this time, under the SEAL's sharp gaze, every detail looked wrong. The printing, the seal, the name, it didn't align. The son's training kicked in. He noticed every hesitation, every twitch, every shallow breath. He didn't expose them immediately. Instead, he gave them enough room to reveal more lies. "Which department did you say you were with?" he asked calmly. The men exchanged glances, stumbling over their story. The father watched in awe as his son maintained full control without raising his voice or showing anger. The imposters had entered this property believing intimidation would be simple. But now, it was them who felt trapped. The SEAL's words carried weight, pressing down on their act until it cracked. The neighbors across the street peeked out their windows, curious about the scene unfolding. What looked like an ordinary HOA dispute was quickly unraveling into something deeper. The son's presence shifted the power dynamic entirely. And in that shift, the fake cops began realizing the danger of underestimating the wrong family. Every con relies on confidence, but confidence crumbles under truth. The Navy SEAL leaned forward slightly, his eyes locked on theirs, his voice steady. "You've got one chance to explain why you're here before I make a call." His words weren't a threat, they were a promise. The father, who moments earlier had felt cornered, now felt a wave of security. The imposters shuffled uncomfortably, muttering about property violations, but their excuses didn't hold up. One of them raised his voice, trying to reclaim authority, but the son remained unmoved. Years of military discipline had taught him that volume doesn't equal strength, control does. He asked again, this time slower, "Who sent you?" The imposters faltered, avoiding eye contact, their story falling apart piece by piece. What they didn't know was that this SEAL had interrogated real threats in far more dangerous places, and these men weren't even convincing enough to pass a minute of scrutiny. The father realized just how lucky he was to have his son home at that moment. The air was tense, but for the first time, it wasn't the homeowner who felt pressure, it was the pretenders, their plan unraveling faster than they could patch it. Word spread quickly in the neighborhood. More curtains moved, more phones recorded quietly from behind glass. The imposters began to realize they weren't just facing a family, they were facing a community watching closely. The Navy SEAL shifted slightly, his posture signaling quiet dominance, and asked once more. For real identification. Instead of answering, one of the fake officers attempted to bluff, saying, "You don't want trouble with us." But that sentence was a mistake. Trouble was what the SEAL had lived through for years, in deserts, on seas, in the shadows of missions most people would never hear about. His reply was sharp but calm, "I don't fear trouble. I eliminate it." The imposters froze. The father stood taller now, emboldened by his son's courage. The neighborhood cameras captured every second, and the balance of power tipped further away from the frauds. They had wanted fear and silence, but instead, they triggered unity and exposure. The son reached into his pocket, slowly dialing a number. The imposters panicked, realizing the call wasn't just to local police but potentially to federal contacts. The act was crumbling, and escape seemed like the only option left for them. Just as the imposters began to step back, the SEAL's voice cut through the air. "You're not leaving until this is resolved." The firmness in his tone locked them in place. Neighbors gathered quietly outside, phones in hand, their presence forming a silent wall of witnesses. The imposters had thought their fake badges gave them authority, but now they were powerless against truth, unity, and the trained precision of someone who had seen real conflict. The SEAL gestured calmly for his father to stay back, protecting him, while he positioned himself between the imposters and the exit. He didn't need weapons, his composure alone was unshakable strength. Sirens in the distance signaled that real authorities were on their way. The imposters' eyes darted, panic spreading across their faces. They realized the trap they had set had reversed, and now they were the ones cornered. The father's fear had turned into admiration. His son wasn't just his child, he was his shield. This wasn't just a family matter anymore, it was a clear stand against deception. The neighborhood saw it all, and the story was no longer about intimidation, it was about justice catching up. When the real police arrived, the imposters' act collapsed completely. Their badges, their stories, their confidence, all gone in an instant. Handcuffs replaced intimidation, and the neighborhood erupted with relief. The Navy SEAL didn't celebrate loudly, he simply nodded, ensuring his father was safe. The homeowner finally exhaled, feeling a weight lift off his chest. The officers thanked the SEAL for his quick observation and steady presence. Neighbors came forward, praising the family for standing strong. The imposters were led away, their plan exposed and destroyed by the very people they had tried to scare. In the quiet that followed, the father placed a hand on his son's shoulder, his voice breaking with pride. "I didn't know how strong I was until you stood by me." The SEAL smiled faintly, replying with the calm of someone who had been through much worse, "You were strong the whole time. They just made you forget it." The story ended not just with justice, but with a powerful reminder, no matter how loud deception tries to be, truth, courage, and unity will always speak louder. And sometimes, the greatest strength is knowing when to stand firm together.